been so exciting to see this Artemis journey. I was here for the Artemis 1 launch, and that just made it all so real. We saw the hardware, we saw the vehicle, we saw the launch, and we knew that the next time that vehicle launched, it would be with my friends and colleagues on board. So it was an incredibly exciting moment for all of us as astronauts.
That launch coming in February of 2025, currently scheduled on the calendar. Let's go back now to SpaceX in Hawthorne, California.
Thanks, Daryl. As we continue to count down, let's take a closer look at the vehicles that will be taking Crew 10 to the International Space Station today. Falcon 9 is a two-stage rocket developed and manufactured by SpaceX, known for its safe, reliable, and cost-effective access to space. It's also the first orbital-class rocket capable of reflight. And sitting at the top of Falcon 9, Dragon and its trunk stand over 26 feet tall. There are two windows on the spacecraft, plus one underneath the nose cone. The nose cone opens shortly after launch to expose the forward with the space station. Dragon's trunk holds solar cells, which power Dragon while it's in free flight. And the trunk can also carry unpressurized cargo. Now, Dragon has played a significant role in advancing our future in space by safely transporting crew to and from the space station. There are currently 4 Dragon spacecraft supporting human spaceflight missions that have docked to the station. There you can see them on your screen. That is Endeavour, Resilience, Endurance, and Freedom. Now, designed to be the safest spacecraft ever flown, Dragon is capable of carrying up to 7 passengers to and from Earth orbit and beyond.
And Dragon has 16 Draco thrusters that can be used in space to help navigate the spacecraft to its destination, each providing 90 pounds of force. That doesn't include the 8 Super Draco thrusters used for an abort, which are no longer active once the crew is in orbit. Dragon has flown 49 times with 15 human spaceflight missions since 2020, when Dragon became the first private spacecraft to take humans to the International Space Station. In that time, Dragon has flown over 1,000 experiments to space and 56 crew members representing 14 different countries.
Dragon has proven to be a versatile spacecraft. It can autonomously dock to the space station when outfitted with the International Space Station docking adapter, as it is for today's flight. When it's not going to the space station and in free flyer mode, the docking adapter can be swapped out for a cupola. Another option that we have is the Skywalker hardware, which supports extravehicular activities as the crew use the Polaris Dawn mission. Now, continuing down the vehicle, we do have the second stage. The second stage is powered by a single Merlin vacuum engine, or MVAC engine, which is optimized to perform in the vacuum of space. After stage separation, the MVAC will ignite and carry Dragon to its target orbit. Now, the Falcon 9's first and second stages are connected by the black inner stage, which houses the MVAC engine and the system that decouples the two stages during stage separation. And below that is the first stage.
Stage 2 LOX load has started.
Good call out. Stage 2 LOX loading has begun. Below that is the first stage, which is powered by 9 Merlin engines. These 9 Merlin engines provide the initial thrust to lift.
Dragon SpaceX reporting that we continue to track no issues with Dragon or Falcon proceeding to launch.
SpaceX Dragon, copy.
Great news, just calling out that we're tracking no issues. These 9 Merlin engines provide the initial thrust to lift Falcon 9 off of the ground through the lower, thicker parts of the Earth's atmosphere. Now, each of these Merlin 1D engines delivers about 190,000 pounds of thrust at sea level, which gives Falcon 9 a combined 1.7 million pounds of thrust.
And after stage separation, stage 1 will return to Earth for recovery and reuse on a future mission using a combination of the Merlin sea level engines and the 4 titanium grid fins located near the top of the booster, which will guide it during its re-entry and landing. The Falcon 9 first stage is also equipped with 4 landing legs that deploy and allow for vertical landing on a drone ship or landing pad. Now, today we will be attempting to return the booster to land at landing zone 1. The second stage will power Dragon into its initial low Earth orbit before separating, leaving Dragon to continue its journey to space station using its own thrusters. About 40 seconds after separation, Dragon's nose cone deploy sequence will begin, exposing the guidance navigation controls that help Dragon autonomously fly to the space station. With T0 coming up in just under 15 minutes, our teams are doing a series of system checks to ensure Dragon and Falcon 9 are ready to go.
And we are still looking good for an on-time launch today. Both Dragon and Falcon 9 continue to be healthy. As we continue to listen and watch the countdown, our teams are preparing the vehicle for flight. Propellant loading of both RP-1 and liquid oxygen began at T-minus 35 minutes. And we also heard the call a few minutes ago that the launch escape system is armed. The launch escape system is designed to propel Dragon away from Falcon 9 in the event of an emergency during launch. Now, the range, which is monitoring the keep-out zones among other key flight requirements, also continues to report no issues, and they are go to support today's launch.
And weather also continues to look good. You can see it there on your screen, clear skies. And we are still tracking a roughly less than 5% chance of violation at our target liftoff time of 7:03 p.m. Eastern, 4:03 p.m. Pacific. And as you heard earlier, we're continuing to be optimistic that we're going to maintain these good conditions into launch. And as a reminder, today we have an instantaneous launch window driven by our planned rendezvous point, the point at which Dragon and station will meet in orbit. The station is orbiting the Earth at more than 17,000 miles per hour, and Dragon needs to catch up. That means we have to deliver Dragon to the correct orbit by timing its trajectory relative to the orbiting laboratory so that they are in the same place in orbit at the same time. So precise liftoff time is crucial for hitting that rendezvous point. And at this point, if we hear a hold for any reason, we would have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity, which is Saturday, March 15th at 6:41 p.m. Eastern, 3:41 p.m. Pacific. But again, everything and all the systems continue to be go. And for now, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Gary at the Johnson Space Center for a quick status update from Houston.
Hey, thank you, Anna. Back here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, teams continue to work around the clock to monitor activities aboard the Orbital Outpost. Leading the teams inside the room is Flight Director T.J. Creamer. The team in Mission Control Houston, the team in Hawthorne, and the astronauts aboard the space station will track the autonomous docking of Dragon Endurance when they enter joint operations. This will happen when the spacecraft enters the approach ellipsoid, the invisible boundary stretching 4 by 2 by 2 kilometers that helps us monitor all arriving and departing spacecraft, is essentially the neighborhood of the space station. Once docked, crew members in both Dragon and aboard the station will perform a series of leak checks, then work to open the spacecraft's hatch for Crew 10 to float into the station and begin their stay. We anticipate that the hatch will be opened about an hour and a half after the docking. When they enter the orbital outpost, Crew 10 will be greeted by the rest of their Expedition 72 crew and will come together for opening remarks. That's all from us here in Mission Control as the anticipation continues to build for launch in under 20 minutes. How's it looking on the Space Coast, Daryl?
We're looking great, Gary. Looking fantastic. We've got fantastic weather, 95% go. You see the beautiful shot outside of the pad there, the rocket and the spacecraft. When it launches today, the crew aboard the ISS, the destination for today's launch, will be about 260 miles over top of the west coast of Australia, so too far to see the launch. It's nice to see a rocket go off when you're on the ISS, but unfortunately it won't be the case this time.
Oh, yeah, it is a wonderful thing to see when your crewmates are heading towards you. I remember a photograph that Christina Cook took of my Soyuz approaching the station, and one of these incredible opportunities that you could see the outline of the trajectory of the Soyuz as it approached, and it's such a beautiful image. It's a shame they won't be able to see it, but they will be so excited to have their crewmates come on board.
And we're about to hear from the crew here before launch. We'll hear from them after launch. It'll be special. They have some important things to say.
Oh, absolutely. I am very excited to hear these final thoughts coming from the entire crew right before launch.
Okay. All right. With that, we'll send it back to SpaceX in Hawthorne, California.
Thanks, Daryl. Our next major milestone on the countdown event will be around the T-minus 10-minute mark, which is just in about 5 seconds, when Falcon 9 launch commit criteria get checked by computers.
Dragon, SpaceX, confirm crew displays are configured for launch.
SpaceX Dragon, displays are configured for launch. And with that, this is the pilot, Nicole Ayers. And on behalf of Crew 10, we'd like to say that today we celebrate celebrate the countless individuals all over the world that have made this journey possible. To the engineers, instructors, flight controllers, scientists, and leaders who worked tirelessly to get us here, thank you for your dedication to the safety and success of this mission. And a special thank you to our friends and families for your unwavering love and support. This mission is a testament of what humans can achieve when we work together. Go Crew 10!
Such great words from the crew. Again, and some cheering going on. You can see that on your screen.
SpaceX copies. And the entire SpaceX team here, it's been a pleasure working together to prepare for this mission. And from all of us, good luck, Godspeed, go Crew 10, and enjoy the ride.
Great comms. That was from our core here in Hawthorne in Mission Control. Now, there are many systems in place to ensure that the rocket and the crew are both safe leading up to liftoff and during flight. And now that we are in terminal count, our teams are performing those final checks before launch.
And coming up here in just a few minutes, we will start having that stage 1 engine chill start. And now we're just over 8 minutes away from launch. Again, today's ride to orbit will be about 9 minutes, which is from the time of liftoff to second stage cutoff. And then Dragon in the second stage will continue to coast for a few minutes after that prior to separation. You'll hear some performance calls along the way as we get into the final countdown and then after liftoff. And these are SpaceX flight controllers reporting on trajectory, speed, booster performance, and other key milestones. So some of the callouts you will hear after liftoff are a combination of letters and numbers, which will mark different abort zones throughout the flight up the eastern seaboard. The first two are 1 Alpha and 1 Bravo, which are abort modes available while the first stage is firing. And then the next round of numbers and letters you'll hear are 2 Alpha through 2 Echo, though you'll only hear the 2 Alpha call on the public loops, and those will come into play once the second stage kicks in. And then diverting a little bit from the other naming system, you will hear the call out Shannon, which refers to Shannon, Ireland. And this call means the crew could target off the coast of Ireland if they needed to abort late in the second stage burn. And you'll continue to hear those different callouts along with key performance callouts from the guidance, navigation, and control officer along with the propulsion lead. We're now just under 7 minutes away from launch.
Engines are chilling in for flight.
And we just heard that confirmation that the stage 1 engine chill has started.
Yeah, exactly. That call out is because we are flowing a little bit of liquid oxygen into the engines. That's to help prepare the vehicle or the engines for the full flow of liquid oxygen into the engines. That makes sure that we don't shock the system at that full flow. Now we are still loading. At liftoff, Falcon 9 is consuming about 700 gallons of fuel per second. So engine chill helps us prevent that thermal shock into the engine. So again, we have passed that T-minus 7 minute mark. Next call out will be stage 1, RP1 loading complete, which we just heard that.
And the RP1 is densified kerosene or rocket fuel that will propel the crew into orbit. All of that RP1 is now fully loaded into the rocket, and since we previously heard that second stage loading was completed. We are still loading the liquid oxygen or LOX onto the first and second stages, and this is the oxidizer needed to combine with the densified kerosene that just finished loading. The RP1 liquid propellant needs an oxidizer to combine with in order to ignite. Coming up in just under 30 seconds at that T-minus 5 minute mark, we will hear the call for Dragon to configure for terminal count and then transition over to internal power.
Tanks are pressing for Starmike retract.
Dragon is in configure for terminal count.
And there we just heard that call out for terminal count. So now Dragon onboard computers will take control of the spacecraft. We also heard that the propellant tanks on Falcon 9 are getting ready to pressurize, adding some additional structural support to the rocket as we get ready for that strong back to retract. And that strong back provides access to Falcon 9's fueling lines.
Has started.
That strong back lower has now started, and again, that strong back provides access to Falcon 9's fueling lines and umbilicals for both propellant load and the different gases being loaded on board.
And what you should see on your screen is there's those clamp arms that are around the second stage just below Dragon. They're going to open up, and once they're fully open, then that strong back or the TE can begin to recline away from the vehicle. Now, initially, we are going to recline that TE just about 2 degrees away from the vehicle, and then we will fully move the TE about 45 degrees away up at T0. And they're maybe a little hard to see on your screen, but the clamp arms are opening up there. There's a better view. Looks like the clamp arms are now fully open, so that TE will begin to move away from the vehicle. Very slow and slight, but just enough to get two degrees away from the vehicle.
And then coming up in less than 30 seconds at the T-minus 3 minute mark, the first stage liquid oxygen or LOX load will complete. And we'll continue to check through a couple more fueling milestones, including one around the T-minus 2 minute mark before flight, where we'll hear liquid oxygen loading is complete on the second stage. And now you see all of those white clouds on your screen. Those are clouds of vapor, and they're completely normal, and we'll see them continue to build up as we get closer to launch. This is because liquid oxygen is super chilled, so a little of it will boil off in the warmer Florida air.
Stage 1, LOX load complete.
Great call out there. Stage 1.
Count and on.
Putting liquid oxygen onto stage 2, and that'll wrap up here at the T-minus 2 minute mark, just about 20 seconds from now. And once we finish propellant loading, that will mean that 1 million pounds of RP1 and liquid oxygen will be loaded onto Falcon 9 here, just under 10 seconds.
Stage 2, LOX load complete.
We just heard confirmation that the stage 2 liquid oxygen loading is now complete. We are under 2 minutes away from launch. Gas closeout has also begun. So we're now isolating all of the feed lines for the different gas systems from the Falcon 9 rocket. And those gases will then get vented overboard through umbilicals and the strong back. And you just heard that call out that Dragon is an
Ground gas
aisle.
closeouts, expect loud venting.
Well, you can hear that venting now. Obviously, rockets are very loud, and the sound can impart pressure loads on the rocket itself. The ton of water absorbs and prevents the sound from hitting the structure and reverberating back onto the rocket. And that call out for auto idle puts the rocket in a state the flight computers understand before it takes over, making sure the transition to final countdown is smooth and all the flight computers on board are in sync and configured for launch.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And now we just heard that Falcon 9 is in startup.
Granted in countdown.
And in the final countdown, less than a minute to go, and at the time of launch, the space station will be flying 260 statute miles over the west coast of Australia.
Dragon, SpaceX. Go for launch.
And great call out.
SpaceX, Dragon 10, copy, go for launch.
Great call out that we're go for launch, and we do have a large crowd here in front of Mission Control.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Waiting to watch Crew 10 off today.
T-minus 15. T-minus 10. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff. Go SpaceX, go NASA Crew 10. Copy, 1 Alpha.
And liftoff of Crew 10 now
Vehicles pitching downrange.
Space Station. 1.7 million pounds of thrust now propelling Falcon 9 and Crew 10. into today's flight.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Continuing to get good performance call-outs.
Throttle down.
Yeah, we are throttling down the engines in preparation for Max Q. What great timing that was. We just passed through Max Q. That's the largest structural load that the vehicle will see on ascent.
Vehicle supersonic. Stage 1 throttle up.
We're now just over 1 minute and 10 seconds into today's flight, traveling at more than 1,400 miles per hour.
Stage 1 Bravo.
And we just heard that call out for 1 Bravo, which means we're in the second and final abort mode for the first stage, continuing to get good performance. And the crew already pulling over 2 Gs. Next up, we'll have a couple of events happening in rapid succession.
Back chill started.
First will be that on the second stage impact engine, which we just heard. And then we'll have MECO, or main engine cutoff, where the 9 engines on the first stage will cut off ahead of the first and second stages. Will be separating from one another. Then the single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will ignite and continue to carry Crew 10 to orbit while the first stage begins its journey back to Earth. Now we're just 2 minutes into today's flight. The vehicle is traveling just under 4,000 miles per hour.
We're just about 20 seconds away from those events that Anna just mentioned. The 9 Merlin engines will shut down here in just about 10 seconds for MECO, stage separation, and SES-1.
Main engine cutoff.
SpaceX Dragon, 2 Alpha.
Stage separation confirmed.
Copy, 2 Alpha.
Great call-outs and incredible views there on your left-hand screen. On your left-hand screen, you can see a view from stage 1. And an extremely excited crowd here in Hawthorne. Views of that boost back burn on the first stage, as well as the MVAC engine igniting on the second stage. Great views there. Now the booster is in its boost back burn. This is the first of 3 burns as it makes its way back down to Earth. This will last about 45 seconds. And the crew, 10 crew, is still on board Dragon attached to Falcon 9 second stage, which you can see there on your right-hand screen.
And we're now at 3 minutes and 20 seconds into today's flight. The vehicle is traveling about 6,500 miles per hour. And they are on their way to the space station. And we did have that confirmation coming up of the boost back shutdown. And then coming up at the T+6 minute mark. And there we have our first images of the crew inside the Dragon spacecraft as they make their way into orbit. And the crew
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
continuing to get good call-outs.
SpaceX Dragon, copy nominal.
The stage 2 continues to be on power with in its firing until we get to that second stage engine cutoff around the 9-minute mark of flight. About 5 minutes of flight to go before Dragon will be flying free.
Some cool views there on your left-hand screen. That's the first stage booster as it's making its way back down to Earth. This is a ground tracking camera getting these awesome views.
And on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see that lone Merlin vacuum engine of the second stage. We're continuing to get good performance on the second stage. And the crew's G-loads will dip right when we hit the separation events, and it's going to continue to build up until then.
Drag SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
SpaceX Dragon, copy nominal.
We're now at 5 minutes into today's flight with a liftoff at 7:03 p.m. Pacific, 7:03 p.m. Eastern, 4:03 p.m. Pacific. Continuing to get good call-outs as Stage 1 makes its way back to Earth, and Stage 2 continues to fire, propelling Dragon into orbit.
If you're just now joining us, the 4 members of Crew 10 launched from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And they're currently on board Dragon, still attached to Falcon 9 second stage, which you're seeing there on your right-hand screen. On your left-hand screen, the first stage vehicle is making its way back down to Earth. It already completed the first of 3 burns as the boost back burn, and the next event coming up for that vehicle is going to be the entry burn.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Great call outs there. That entry burn is coming up.
SpaceX Dragon, copy nominal.
That entry burn is coming up here in just under 20 seconds. We'll reignite 3 of those 9 Merlin 1 engines to help slow the vehicle down as it makes its way back into the Earth's atmosphere.
We're now just over 6 minutes into today's flight as Dragon and the second stage continue traveling at over 12,000 miles per hour, making their way into orbit and on the way to the International Space Station.
There, we just saw on the screen, it was very quick, but we had the entry burn, which we got some cool views of that from the ground, which is awesome. Now the next event coming up will be the landing burn for the first stage. That's coming up here in about 30 seconds.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Again, great call outs for
SpaceX Dragon, copy nominal.
Confirmation there from the crew as they continue to make their way into orbit. Now 7 minutes into today's flight, the first stage making its way back down to Earth and the second stage continuing to fire.
This is an awesome view. Let's see if we can see the center engine relight for that landing burn here in a few seconds. There's that landing burn. Let's watch as Falcon 9 touches down on landing zone 1.
And now that the first stage has made its way back to Earth, we're about a minute away from the second engine cutoff, which we're expecting around the 9-minute mark of today's flight. We're continuing to get good call-outs, and Dragon and all of the systems on the vehicle are performing as expected. Just over 8 minutes into today's flight, traveling more than 21,000 miles per hour.
Terminal guidance.
Hearing good call-outs. We're about 30 seconds away from that second engine cutoff, and then shortly after that, about a minute or so later, we will have orbital insertion.
SpaceX Dragon, Shannon.
SpaceX copy, Shannon.
And that call out there for Shannon, and that is the call out for Shannon, Ireland, which is the final abort stage for the second stage off the coast of Ireland. Standing by for a second engine cutoff.
And back shutdown. Dragon SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
And there we heard confirmation
Launch escape system disarmed.
Good confirmation of orbital insertion. Crew 10 is now well on their way to the International Space Station following a 9.5-minute flight uphill.
Now, the second stage is preparing for Dragon separation here, which should happen shortly. In about 10-15 seconds is what we're expecting. And we're preparing for stabilizing the second stage so that we can have a smooth separation.
And there you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, the crowd is going wild. There on your screen you can see that Dragon separation, that second stage making its way, and Dragon is now flying free. 10 minutes into today's flight, that was about a minute after we had that second engine cutoff and orbital insertion. It looks like a good separation, good rates. Dragon now flying free. There on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see some first images of Crew 10 inside the Dragon Endurance spacecraft as they're now successfully in orbit.
Dragon, SpaceX Chief Engineer on Countdown 1. On behalf of the entire Falcon team, we thank you for flying with Falcon and wish you a great mission. Over to LD.
It was an honor flying with you this evening. We wish you well on your journey and give Crew 9 our best. Thank you for flying SpaceX.
SpaceX Dragon, this is Crew 10 Commander Ann McClain. Thank you to all of the teams from across the world who contributed to the launch today. Spaceflight is tough, but humans are tougher. Days like today are made possible only when people choose to do the harder right over the easier wrong. Build relationships, choose cooperation, and believe in the inherent goodness of all people across the world. To my family and friends, without you, I would not be here. Explore boldly, live gracefully, go Crew 10. Now over to pilot Nicole Ayers.
Pilot Nicole Ayers again. We're not the first humans to get to orbit, and we wouldn't be here without the bravery and hard work of those who have paved the way for human spaceflight. We now get the unique perspective of Earth without borders and get to revel in the connectedness of humanity. I would be remiss to not once again acknowledge those who helped me get here, to this wonderful view and this perspective, to the teachers, coaches, fellow officers, fellow teammates, Raptor Nation, to my friends and family that encouraged my dreams from the start. Thank you. I wouldn't be here without you.
This is Mission Specialist Takuya Onishi. I want to say a huge thank you to NASA and SpaceX, especially the Falcon 9 team for the successful launch, and we are looking forward to a smooth ride to the International Space Station. 日本の皆さん、たくさんの応援ありがとうございます。9年ぶりの無重力の感覚をかみしめてます。これから先の ISS への宇宙の旅、楽しんでいきたいと思います。I will now hand the mic over to Mission Specialist Kirill.
Thanks a lot to NASA and SpaceX for this wonderful ride, and I want to say a couple of words in Russian. Пользуясь такой чудесной возможностью, хочу поздравить с 65-летием со дня начала подготовки первого отряда. И также хочу сказать спасибо большое за те знания и жизненный опыт, который мной были получены в тех стенах для того, чтобы выполнить этот полет. А также спасибо школе номер 14 города Назарова, Ульяновскому высшему авиационному училищу гражданской авиации и авиакомпании МКАР и Нордвинд, где я начинал свой путь в небо. И, конечно же, спасибо семье и за поддержку.
Thank you, Crew 10. At this time, I can report nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts.
SpaceX Dragon, copies.
And such great words from Crew 10, as well as the core here in Hawthorne and Mission Control. We also got confirmation that the nose cone deploy is underway. The 6 hooks that hold the nose cone in place during the launch and ascent portions have to retract, and then the nose cone will be able to start to swing open and deploy. Now, this uncovers a number of critical systems for the flight up to the space station, including the forward bulkhead thrusters and the docking hatch. Just pausing in case there were going to be any comms. And we did have good confirmation, good checkouts of the 12 Draco thrusters around the service section. Now, 4 to go after we get the nose cone open, and then the ECLIS, the environmental control and life support system, activated inside of Dragon. Now, soon the crew will be able to get their visors open and get out of their suits and settle in for the ride to the space station.
And now we're just waiting for confirmation that the nose cone has fully deployed with all of the hooks open. But just to recap a little bit, we did have a successful liftoff of Crew 10 about 18 minutes ago at 7:03 p.m. Eastern, 4:03 p.m. Pacific. And following an approximately 9-minute ride after liftoff, we had that orbital insertion, and Dragon and Crew 10 were flying free and well on their way to the International Space Station. They now have an approximately 28-hour journey before they do reach their destination of the space station, and that docking is targeted for tomorrow, March 15th at 8:30 p.m. Pacific, 11:30 p.m. Eastern, to the forward-facing port of the station's Harmony module. Between now and then, Dragon will perform a series of burns as it catches up to the space station, and that first burn will be a phase burn about 30 minutes from now at 4:52 p.m. Pacific, 7:52 p.m. Eastern.
And the nose cone is about 75% open at this point. Human spaceflight has come so far in the last 5 years with Dragon. In addition to flying people, SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft also enables researchers the opportunity to fly critical science to orbit. And so far, SpaceX and Dragon have carried over 1,000 research experiments to and from low Earth orbit, both to the International Space Station and on our free flyer missions. From DNA sequencing to 3D printing studies enabled by Dragon and the space station tests Dragon and the space station test a variety of technologies, systems, and materials that will be needed for future long-duration exploration missions. Now, every mission yields critical science and research and learnings that help make life both on Earth and in space better. And flights like today's help us continue to lay this foundation for our future among the stars and continue our mission to make life multiplanetary.
Once Crew 10 does arrive to the International Space Station, they will, of course, partake in some additional science and research. They will have over 200 experiments that they will contribute to during their time aboard the International Space Station. Again, we're just standing by for confirmation that that nose cone has fully deployed. And we may also get some additional look inside the cabin of the crew.
As we patiently wait for those views, we are trying to see if we can get some views. We were seeing some views from the second stage. This looks like it might be a view from the forward.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal nose cone opening and forward bulkhead Draco checkouts.
SpaceX Dragon copies and confirm nominal ECLIS activation and go for visors.
There we heard confirmation that the nose cone has fully deployed and that the crew is now able to lift their visors. And there, again, we're seeing some views inside the Dragon Endurance spacecraft with Crew 10 on their way to the International Space Station.
Affirm, you are go to open visors.
Copy.
Great calls there. They're go to open visors, which means that shortly they'll also be able to get out of their suits and get comfortable for the entire ride on Dragon to the International Space Station.
And from left to right on your screen, there's Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov, NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers, NASA astronaut Ian McLean, and then far on the right-hand side of your screen is JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi.
And there you could see that they are in microgravity as their tablets are floating around there. They do have them attached to a little string that helps allow them so that, you know, as they're strapped into their seats, they don't lose their tablets.
We're now just over 20 minutes into today's flight following that successful liftoff at 7:03 p.m. Eastern, 4:03 p.m. Pacific. There you're getting an over-the-shoulder view between the commander and pilot, so Anne McLean and Nicole Ayers.
If you're just now joining us, you are watching live Crew 10 out in space in the Dragon vehicle. They lifted off from Space Launch Complex 39A at 7:03 p.m. Eastern Time.
Dragon SpaceX, there are about 3 minutes remaining in the current ground station pass. At this time, you're welcome to introduce your zero-G indicator. We're using the full crew cam so we can see all 4 crew members right now.
All right, copies. Thank you, SpaceX. We'd like to introduce the Crew 10G indicator. Takuya is holding him up. This is a hand crochet origami crane. The Japanese origami, hand crocheted in the United States, and his name is Drug, which is the Russian name for friend. Origami is the Japanese art of folding paper. This is a nod to the unique and deep cultural traditions from which each of us come. While we're from different parts of the world, we are brought together in this bold endeavor, and we represent all of humanity. The folded paper design was also chosen to represent paper airplanes that we made when we were kids, before we were astronauts, when all we had was a dream. And we looked up at the sky and we wondered, what if? It's a symbol that every big accomplishment starts with a quiet dream, and that dreams do come true when you believe in yourself and you listen only to those who believe in you. Crew 10 believes in all of the dreamers. The flag and the number markings on the crane, there's a number 10 on each of its wings and a flag from each one of our countries on the tail. This is a nod to each of our shared experiences as professional pilots. These patches are arranged to look like an airplane. This is a source of deep pride for our crew, because what pilot doesn't like to talk about the fact that they're a pilot? But this also symbolizes our shared culture as astronauts. In the years of training together, we found we have far more in common than we do different. Our zero-G indicator was handmade by a small business owner in the United States. This represents all the hands which created our entire space program, and this rocket and this capsule that we're flying today. It also represents all of the artists and musicians who inspire people to imagine beyond what they can see. Spaceflight is perhaps the most complex endeavor of our time, but it was built one step at a time, by one person at a time. Finally, the origami crane is the international symbol for peace, hope, and healing. Crew 10 hopes to serve as a beacon of hope, a reminder of what humans can accomplish when we see the goodness in one another and we choose to work together toward a common goal. Today, we are united not through common enemy, but through shared optimism, the basic belief in the goodness of humanity. It is far easier to be enemies than it is to be friends. It's easier to break partnerships and relationships than it is to build them. Spaceflight is hard, and success depends on leaders of character who choose the harder right over the easier wrong, and who build programs, partnerships, and relationships. We explore for the benefit of all. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, then go together. Crew 10 chooses to go together in peace, because you cannot be great without the greatness of others. Go NASA, go Roscosmos, go JAXA, and go Crew 10.
Dragon SpaceX, we really appreciate those words, Ann. Thanks for introducing.
There From NASA astronaut and the Crew 10 commander, Ann McClain. And again, Crew 10 comprised of McClain along with NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers and JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi along with Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov are now safely in orbit following an approximately 9-minute ride after a liftoff at 4:03 p.m. Pacific, 7:03 p.m. Eastern from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The crew now has an approximately 28-hour journey ahead of them before they reach their destination, the International Space Station.